Hello and welcome to everyone to today's panel discussion, the modern data lifecycle from design to deployment in an AI-driven world. Thank you for joining us. It's quite a mouthful, and really excited to dive into it. Thank you. The core concept behind today is that organizations are asking more from their data platforms than ever before. These data environments at a lot of organizations that were originally built for just reporting and analytics are now expected to support both reporting and analytics, but also AI initiatives, real-time insights, evolving business requirements, increasingly complex governance demands, and all at a speed in which we really haven't seen much before. And that's quite the challenge. Most of these environments weren't necessarily designed to operate at this level of speed and change. Architecture, data engineering, data modeling, governance, orchestration, deployment, they've often existed as separate workflows owned by different teams at times, depending on the size and scale of the organization, which can make it really hard to maintain consistency, to adapt to change, to make sure your organization is future-proof, and then, of course, to scale data initiatives both effectively but also efficiently, particularly from a cost standpoint. And what we've been seeing across the industry and is a shift towards thinking about the entire data lifecycle as a connected system where architecture, modeling, metadata management, automation are working together to support both your analytics program and also AI, which oftentimes what we're seeing are not necessarily mutually exclusive in how organizations are approaching it. So today's discussion, we're going to explore what exactly the modern life cycle actually looks like in practice. We have a number of awesome experts joining us that I'll let them introduce themselves in just one moment. But to give a summary of what we'll talk about is, we're going to kind of cover why traditional development life cycles are struggling in modern data environments, the growing importance of course, semantic models, which we're hearing everywhere, and shared definitions of data, how data modeling connects to architecture, engineering, and governance, the role of automation, and what data leaders should prioritize as they prepare their platforms for AI-driven workloads and really an AI-driven organization, so to say. So we'll dive into that for about 40 minutes or so. I'll leave some time at the end to make sure we get some audience Q&A. So please put questions in the chat. We want to make sure we'll get to them. If we don't have time for them at the end, we'll follow up personally as well after this to make sure we get your questions answered. But as questions come up, feel free to enter them into the chat. And we'll make sure for some time at Q&A at the end. As a quick introduction, my name's Eric Snyder. I'll be moderating this. I am the general manager of WhereScape and also the former general manager before coming over to WhereScape of ER Studio. So excited to have both the ER Studio teams and the WhereScape teams on here for today's conversation. As mentioned, joined by a fantastic group of panelists. I will kick it over to Simon to start us off with introductions for himself and a bit about WhereScape before going to Jamie, Mark, and Kevin, and then diving in. Simon, if you want to give a quick introduction to yourself.
Thanks, Eric, and good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. Simon Springs, so I'm product director at WhereScape. I've been with WhereScape for many, many years, started actually building data warehouse platforms 15 years ago or so. Joined WhereScape as a consultant. I'm now looking after the product side of things. I've seen so many different warehouses built over the years on all sorts of different platforms using all sorts of different modeling styles and different ETL patterns. So for loading data, transforming data. WhereScape, for those of you that don't know WhereScape, we have applications for designing models that can then push their metadata through templates for generating code to actually create data warehouse platforms or data platforms. That metadata can come from external tools, from other tools. It can be extended within WhereScape, but effectively, it's all about being able to automate as much of that process and apply automation to as much of that process as possible, but also to support different design techniques and kind of ways of building these things that have evolved over the last however many decades. We're obviously seeing so much change in this space now with AI, I mean, not even just AI, but sophisticated CI/CD approaches for kind of automating deployments and detection of changes in systems to then apply that downstream. All sorts of things that at WhereScape we've been doing the kind of the job of allowing our customers to decide what their platforms look like, and then we provide the automation framework. So I'm really looking forward today to just, yeah, talking through the different topics and having a good interaction. Good to meet you all.
Good. I guess that's me next. Hi everyone. I'm Jamie Knowles. I'm Director of Product for ER Studio. I was thinking about this earlier. I've been working on data modeling tools for nearly 30 years now, so time flies. ER Studio is it's an enterprise scale data modeling tool. It allows large groups of people to collaborate on building data models to document and design data assets. And we start off with high level, logical, business driven data models. So really understand how the business works. And then we use those models to drive consistent designs for data assets, whether it be transactional systems or layers of the data warehouse. And a key part of ER Studio is that it integrates with data governance tools like Calibra and Purview, etc. So sort of connecting data architecture and data governance. Over to Mark.
Great. Hello, everybody. And my name is Mark Cram. I am a senior data architect at Enterprise Knowledge Prince. And our organization is key on building blueprints, right? Just like we build blueprints for well, we should have blueprints for building large models, large buildings, right? We would never consider building billion-dollar buildings without a blueprint. The same goes for building very expensive database systems and semantic models. So it's kind of like back to the future, right? We've been talking about data models, but now what we need to talk about at Knowledge Prince, we talk about a framework that talks about knowledge models, right? And those knowledge models are conceptual knowledge and logical knowledge models. And those are the foundation, what we call create once, use many for traditional data models for medallion architecture, but also foundational to semantic models. We have a 3-day course that we teach that teaches you A to Z how to do the knowledge modeling, the business knowledge modeling for conceptual and logical models. We use ER Studio to develop those models in labs. Then you convert those into physical models for maybe a silver layer, and then that same model is converted over to semantic models. So again, create once, use many. So it's a very detailed, advanced data modeling course, and also at the in mid this summer, we're going to be offering industry standard data models, or actually knowledge models, to support. Currently, it'll be for retail. That'll jumpstart the creation of your business knowledge models, conceptual and logical models. So I look forward to showing that to you all in the future. I guess we're passing it over to who's next? Eric, who's next?
It'll be Kevin to round us out.
Okay.
So over to me. Okay, I'm Kevin Marshbank, and been similar to this panel. It's a great panel to be with. 30 years in data warehousing as a data warehouse architect, engineer, DBA, also a WhereScape customer. then a WhereScape employee, and now I'm a partner. I run the Data Vault shop, CEO and principal consultant, working exclusively with WhereScape customers. And that's basically when I became a WhereScape customer, decided I wasn't going to build a warehouse by hand again using the metadata approach and really what we're going to be talking about today, these models to drive what we're building and automating. So I won't give all that away up front. We'll jump into the discussion there, but that's my background.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for the introductions and quick summaries of what y'all do. Let's, without further ado, I guess kind of jump in. Simon, if you want to kick us off with kind of more of an almost like an opening context question here is we've been talking about change and how the data platform landscape has changed dramatically over the last decade from new technologies to competitors to methodologies and modalities. What do you think are the biggest forces reshaping how organizations design and build their data platforms today?
Yeah, I think probably I mean, over the years, it's been about everything's been speeding up. So I think the pace of change is just I was going to say our biggest enemy, but maybe it's not the enemy. It's the kind of thing we need to just keep in check. So the number of different sources, the number of different technologies being used to dish up those sources, the um, the number of different consumers wanting to ask different questions of that data and drive their whatever outcomes they're trying to get from that insight. There's just more, and people expect it, just like you expect to be able to quickly look on your weather app on your phone and see whether or not you need to take an umbrella today. You kind of expect the same now from your enterprise data. And I think that's whether or not your company that you're working for is a massive enterprise or a small startup, you still expect to be able to have that same level of insight that you have in your day-to-day life across the enterprise. So I think the kind of the speed there is really important. I think also um, probably also skill sets is huge. How over the years people's skill levels and again kind of how low level people want to get in terms of development, whether or not you have a team of super knowledgeable experts that know absolutely everything about everything, which was kind of possible 20 years ago in terms of database technology and analytics, whereas today it really isn't. And so it's kind of, I think, catering for the different skill sets is also really key. I'd probably hand that over to Jamie and get his take.
Yeah, I think there's two things that we've been seeing over the last 10 years. One is the sort of approach to the output of the analytics world, the data platform. That's data product thinking, which I think is great. I think in the past, data has been seen as a second class citizen. It's something that sort of these strange guys in IT do, and nobody really cares. Now we're treating data as a first class citizen of the organization, an asset of the organization, something that has value. So the whole sort of way of thinking about data, I think is much better. Thinking about governance right up front, shift left on sort of business thinking and governance thinking, and treating data as the asset it should be. I think the second thing that we're seeing, and this is coming like a sort of a steam train, is AI. So the whole approach to data platforms, I think, has to fundamentally change for AI, and we can perhaps drive into that a bit more later. I mean, Mark, would you agree with those? Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean we've been talking about skills, right? And we don't want to zero in on technical skills. It's more if you want to talk about semantics, right? It's understanding so that it's foundational. It's what Jamie you call the semantic backbone. It's foundational to anything that you do with technology. But let's again, I say back to the future, it's how do we define a an entity? Well, it's the same way you're going to define a semantic class, but if you don't know how to define those, you can throw any technology on it and you're just not going to have it governed properly. That's where, our course helps you learn that. Uh, and the use of ER Studio for that becomes the foundation, or the business terms that can be imported into other data governance tools. But foundation to all this is semantics, or definitions, or terms. Yeah, I just wanted to throw that in there as part of some of the skills required. It's a dying skill, right? Everybody's starting to retire and stuff. We still got to bring it back up because that's not going to go away.
So kind of continuing down, Jamie, you mentioned shift left, right? We've been talking, I think in the chat here, we have a question around, the definition of the semantic layer and what that means here. And I kind of want to continue down this governance road, so to say, in terms of clearing up our definitions, is we've all, we've been talking about this with the modern data life cycle. Like, what is the modern data life cycle? We hear this term used everywhere, but we see that it's kind of can mean different things depending on who you ask. Jamie, maybe if you want to start with this one, and I'd also love to hear Kevin's take. Jamie, from your perspective, like, what does a modern data life cycle actually look like in practice?
Yeah, I think for me, it's a much bigger thing. In the past, it was really about a data engineer, data analysts creating reports. I'm going to create this report, think about what's going to go in the report. I'll source the data. I'll get things built as quickly as possible. Now, I think the end-to-end chain of people, tools, processes is much bigger. We need to involve different groups. We need governance teams and business teams involved at the get-go, doing a lot more. And there's a lot more involved. That's the big thing that I'm seeing.
I think, kind of back to what Simon said, it's more data, more faster. It's everything's kind of the scale's bigger, the speed of delivery of the data is faster, but unfortunately, a lot of times that's just a faster set of swampy data arriving at the end. And the modern data lifecycle, unfortunately, it's more about the technology, the platform, not about the quality of the data. And I think that's the industry is too focused on modern data lifecycle versus the data itself. And I think obviously, as people are seeing with AI, that being able to provide that semantic information to the data model is critically important if you actually want to get right answers, which is the same as it always has been. It's just faster and more convenient to get the wrong answer these days. And we need to get back to, as Mark said, that skill set of actually building those models and being able to provide that quality data that's clean and understandable to the end consumers of the data, whether they're the data scientists, the architects, or actually these days, AI itself.
Hey, can I just piggyback on that for one thing?
Yeah.
So we're not saying don't worry about the new technology coming. Let's continue with
Right.
fast, but you can do in parallel, you have to step back and really look at a framework of coming up with semantics, right? So I'm using the word semantic because that's what we're doing now in AI. But it's terms, it's data governance, it's all that stuff needs to be done at the same time. We're not saying you can't do the hyperspeed to get there faster, but at the same time, in parallel, you need to do all that other stuff too. So organizations need to start funding money for that part too. At the same time, keep your skill set going forward with all the new technologies and those things coming at the same time.
So to avoid this, I think this is a great segue because I think Kevin, you saying, okay, great, it's more data, Simon said it's more data, more fast. But if we don't pay attention to, this semantic backbone, uh it's just a faster, larger swamp. Um, which can cause potentially even more issues than a small swamp. But so it's a great transition to you know think about this idea of before organizations build pipelines and warehouses, they have to decide really kind of what does their data architecture look like, what does their business architecture look like, what should it look like. Um, and Jamie would love to hear kind of like what role do you see then in data modeling, and then maybe even more granularly into the exact like semantic design.
Mm.
What role does that play in shaping in organizations given architecture?
Yeah, I think the word semantic is slightly overloaded, so we probably need to sort of define things.
Mhm.
And going back to sort of how things are changing, we're still seeing a lot of customers that are focused on engineering concerns. They're DBT labs, great. Let's get some DBT labs, and we're going to smash out some pipelines and some outputs, and we're all going to live happily ever after. I think what we're saying is we've got to start thinking about what does the business want. So being able to understand the business, make sure the outputs of the business, the outputs of the platform align to the needs of the business. So you've used this term semantic backbone a few times. So I think a lot of ER Studio customers have been doing this for many years. Good old traditional data modeling. We'll create a beautiful conceptual model, an enterprise logical model of the business, understand how the business works, and then we're going to use that to drive the outputs of the data platform, design data products and such like. So I think the challenge there is a lot of people see, oh, this enterprise logical model as being this big scary thing that's going to take us years to produce. It's never going to be up to date. It's never going to be accurate, and it's going to take us years to produce it before we get going. And I think we've got to take a more sort of pragmatic approach to this. Marx used the term business models, knowledge models. So we need to get the business involved in this process, understanding, getting them to define what does your business look like? Get that into some sort of form that then we can use to design the structures in the warehouse. Mark, do you want to expand a bit on that?
Yeah, and that's an excellent way of looking at it. You don't want to do the big bang approach, right? A lot of people say, "Well, we don't have the time to do an enterprise model," and nobody's asking you. What we're saying is, you start out like Jamie said, product. Let your first, so really a product, and a lot of times we'll start out with master data. What's the product? Retail companies sell products. Retail companies have vendors, manufacturers, customers. Those are all domain master data, but really they could be product domains, data products also. So you can develop those and you can roll those out. And then you can get into the transactional domains like orders and shipping and stuff. So there's a there's a way, an approach to this large elephant we're trying to scope out here. But the nice thing about doing it small is you prove it, you spin through it, and you turn it into a factory after a while. We're going to do product characteristics, product whatever, all the different products. We're going to roll it out. We're going to refine that within our organization, go back and do the next one and roll it out. But you need to come up with an architecture or a framework that supports that so that when you roll it out, and then again, use once, create once, use many. It's good for traditional medallion architecture, but that same blueprint is going to be used for rolling it out into semantic models and so forth. And again, your studio is the tool our organization uses because it handles all of that, right? From the top down all the way to the bottom down. And you can do bottom up if you want to, but yeah.
And Mark, I might go off script here just for a second, but for my own knowledge here, no pun intended, I'd love to, get a better understanding. We've talked about business models, we've touched on knowledge models. Like, from your perspective, what is the definition of a knowledge model now, and
Sure.
how that fits into this?
So they're all everything is a knowledge model because it's knowledge, right? So, but if you look at top down, from an enterprise business knowledge model, there's two models. There's the conceptual knowledge model, and then there's the logical knowledge model. That logical knowledge model is foundational to both physical knowledge models, like traditional for a silver layer or the gold layer of a medallion architecture. It's also foundational to semantic knowledge models also. All of these can be represented in a nice, robust tool like ER Studio, because you have those different models all connected to each other. I can do impact analysis. I can do all the uh, flow through the ER Studio tool sets, right? But we call it knowledge modeling now because data modeling that's data modeling. We don't want to do that anymore. We're now into the new era, right? But truly, you still got to model the business knowledge, and it's involving the business up front. We don't even bring in technical people. It's all business. Define the conceptual enterprise conceptual model. Define the logical knowledge model, right? And then that is used many, many times for different design solutions, traditional and semantic.
I think there's a great comment in the chat there, that is this a reinvigoration of the fundamentals? I think it really is. We kind of
Yeah.
rebranding it a bit to be sort of more modern and up to date. But the basic principles of what we've been doing for 30 years, since the days of sort of Bill Inman, it's still the same principles. You've got to understand how the business works, how the data of the organization supports the business processes of the organization. And it's even more important now today than it's ever been. So there's approaches like data as a product, for instance. Very exciting, love it. We just talked about it. But a lot of organizations are adopting the approach where we're going to split the organization into different domains. They're independent, decentralized, great. Each one's going to conceive the notion of these data products. There's really important things like consistency. If you've got different definitions of what things in are within products in a domain, if they're different, you can have problems. If you've got inconsistent definitions across domains, again, big problems. So what mechanisms have we got to be able to ensure that consistency? As Mark said, create once, use many. Get that single understanding of the business together, and then we're going to reuse that across every design. It's absolutely fundamental. AI is another thing that's driving this. We'll come back to that later on.
So once we've kind of decided on our architecture, we've built our models, as much as possible. You don't want to boil the ocean, but certain things are defined. The next challenge also then kind of becomes actually building building the platform, but also building a platform that can continuously evolve. Doing that efficiently, making sure it's future proof. And this is kind of where, automation and really your metadata management throughout start to play a major role in the data platform you build itself. So, from Simon and Kevin's perspective, I know particularly Kevin, you've seen a lot of this end to end at organizations from design all the way to deployment, but in that continuous iteration, that continuous cycle. Once the architecture and models are defined, where does automation step in, and what is the then impact on its ability to help accelerate delivery today while still avoiding that more data, more swamp, more fast
Right.
component?
Yeah. So, and also to Mark's point, we want to, we're not saying slow down at all. We may say, hey, start with the known parts of the model that you understand what that semantic model is. Let's say, we'll start with in a healthcare environment, claims and providers. Like we know those things well. We're going to start with those members, et cetera. And we'll push that forward. We don't have to do the entire model up in the beginning. And I think I also want to touch on a couple of these questions around semantics, semantic models. We could talk ontologies, taxonomies, et cetera. But I find that sometimes it's a lot easier to use pedantic terms and say, hey, what does it mean? What is a claim? What is, and just talk about, hey, we're just talking about a model that has meaning and tells you what these things are. But to the automation piece of it, again, uh, by just taking the time and using an automation tool, ER Studio can feed WhereScape tools, WhereScape 3D and Red. WhereScape 3D and ER Studio as well can suck in that information from the source to help with that semantic meaning of what the model is. And then that can be used to push over and automate the generation of the physical model and actually the physical objects. And I've seen some really great success stories, and the best success stories are those people that take on that process flow of making sure they are getting that semantic model, that meaning designed up front and pushing that through the automation. I've had very large organizations, I won't name them off the top, their actual names, but they built an entire uh, semantic model, canonical model in 3D, and then pushed that over to WhereScape Red, and it built the entire warehouse for them. And as you know, we're subject to the directions of the executive echelon, and they decided, hey, you're going to swap your entire platform to something completely different platform altogether. And because they had built that entire model, semantic model in 3D, they were actually able to just simply repoint the model with some minor changes in, I think it was 2.5 days. We published it to an entirely different data platform and started loading the data there because the model was already there. The structure was already understood. It just had to swap the physical implementation of that to the other platform. And that was handled automatically by WhereScape underneath the scenes with templates, etc. So that's only possible if an organization takes that time and is committed to producing that semantic model and having a well understood model that can be translated into actual code quickly through automation. So, and fully documented, which is just a beautiful thing.
Yeah, so just jumping in there. So effectively, you're in that situation, you're curating the whole definition of your model and in metadata, and then
Correct.
taking that metadata and pushing it through rules to generate all of the physical code to create the data model, the physical data model, and all of the code to populate it, landing the
Absolutely.
raw data, your business model or your logical model knows that the members entity is linked back to these different tables in these different source systems or these different REST APIs or whatever the sources might be.
Hmm.
Having all of that rich metadata that says the data is coming from there, it ends up in this logical shape, perhaps overlaid with some additional metadata to describe how you might physicalize that, maybe by splitting it into a number of different tables.
Hmm.
You can then use those rules, like the ones we have in WhereScape, to then actually generate the code necessary for those platforms,
Right.
Snowflake, Fabric, whatever it might be. And then when you change platform, um, the business hasn't changed, right? The data sources haven't changed. The insight people want to get out of it hasn't changed. Just the way that
Right.
it's physically located has changed. And so
Yeah.
that's where you just have different templates to create that.
Yeah. And to the point, that's a good point, Simon, that also, if you've taken that time to produce that semantic model, your choice in warehouse methodology for implementing those layers in the medallion architecture, or whether you're doing data warehouse 2.0, Inman style, Kimball star scheme at the end, data vault, etc. All those can be generated via rules and templates. You can still maintain that semantic model up front and choose your physical implementation and let the tool build that physical implementation and all the pipeline and code to move the data through those layers.
Yeah, I think just really quickly, I know that we've been laboring this question for a while, but just jumping back to the original piece around what does that modern life cycle look like? I think if you're investing energy and time into the metadata curation, so the modeling up front, the beauty now is that systems and templates and sort of load patterns and frameworks have evolved over the years so that you can focus your energy on the modeling and linking models back to source systems and then generate the code and see what it looks like. fill those tables, you can really quickly then shortcut the cycle and go, okay, well, we thought it looked like that. Reality is that even though the business might be modeled like that, the data doesn't support it because the keys don't match and you can't actually join that record to that record or whatever it might be. You can then iterate very, very quickly and see the results. And I think it's critical that you actually see the results, then go, oh, yeah, actually, it doesn't quite work like that. Let's tweak the model, press the buttons, and then see what it looks like.
Yep, absolutely. And getting the data in front of the actual consumers of the data is sometimes not, they don't know the semantics of the data up front. You can get pretty close, but if you can deliver quickly through automation and get it in front of them, then they can say, never mind, that's not how that's related. That's not, the ontology that we thought it would be. Let's go back and modify that relationship and how that's related. Or, maybe there's different taxonomy involved. So you can go iterate back through, and it's not lost effort. You can go back and just tweak the model and regenerate the code and reload the data.
Yeah, and Simon, you and I were talking about this before. The whole objective is delivering the right thing, delivering value to the business. And I think in a traditional system, you go all the way through that chain and deliver something, and it's the wrong thing. Oh, heck, that's a big problem for any organization. That's going to be expensive to have to go back and redo things. But I think the sort of combination of good modeling in tools like ER Studio and then the automation of WhereScape can really help with that. So good modeling means that you're failing early on in terms of understanding the requirements, understanding the metadata, gathering the information, understanding the source systems. And then as you say, with WhereScape, because the whole chain is then automated, you press the button and go through that chain, the wrong thing comes out. As you say, you can go back and tweak the parameters and the metadata at the start and go again. And that reduces that whole sort of time. So getting to quality quicker. Much easier.
So this what we're talking about is interesting and it sounds great, but I feel like this is really the meat of it is okay, but then what does like real world implementation look like? How do we actually do something like this? And I'm actually going to kind of keep this question open so feel free to jump in here, but you know, each of y'all have seen a number of organizations go through, modernization, um, have or just gone through modernization for their data lifecycle and for their data platform. What are some of the common or biggest obstacles that y'all have seen organizations run into, and how do folks on this webinar avoid those pitfalls? How can they be more aware of them? I guess just from everyone's experience here, like really, what are those typical obstacles, those typical bottlenecks and issues that organizations hit, and how do we tackle them?
I think again, organizations get stuck into the speed of delivery. Not that that's not important, but they kind of take a approach of just get it in front of the end users. They already understand the data, and they can just rewrite the reports in the cloud now, or whatever modern data platform that they select. That hey, we've upgraded the tooling, but unfortunately, as I tell people, if you move the data from point A to point B, you haven't added any value. You haven't done your job. That's not, you might as well work for two men in a truck. It's so what if you move the data? We need to provide the value. We need to actually help them understand what's being delivered and how it's related so they can actually make better decisions, on the consumption side and actually building those reports that actually provide meaning and provide good data. And that's nothing new, but it's just a repetitive problem of focus on speed and scale. And that's if we just do things faster, we'll get the right answer faster, which is not the case.
I agree. There's a great comment there. DIKW, data, information, knowledge, wisdom. And to your point, there's this still a lot of organizations out there just building pipelines, just getting data from source systems out to sort of the output. In the data product side of things, still saying, yeah, we'll conceive a data product by picking some data at source, and that's the data product. And it's the wrong way around. We've got to start off with the meaning, understanding the meaning, defining what does this output from the platform, what does it mean? Does it answer the question that we want?
Yeah, and that all boils back down to a blueprint, right? You're building a data product. I'm building a building. I'm going to get a blueprint. You do the same thing.
Mm.
And what you don't want to do, and companies do this. Well, let's just look at our existing databases and try to figure out what is there and what it means. But those databases most likely were built by people that didn't know how to design uh, semantics and so forth. They just did something because their budget said we had to get this done at this time. And what we're saying is go, the C-suites of companies need to understand they need blueprints. And we're here to help them with these tools to very quickly and with an approach that says, don't boil the ocean. Start with a data product, start with master data, but roll it out with it with an architecture, with a framework. Do it right, right? And if you do it right, it's cheaper in the long run and reduces risk, increases profitability because you're not making bad decisions anymore and those types of things, right? So we want to get back to doing things, not, I don't want to say the right way, but yeah, we need a blueprint, basically, is what I'm trying to get at here. We're building skyscrapers, so let's have a blueprint, right?
And
Or
I think
yeah,
we all operate from the same blueprint, and this is what we're trying
correct.
to address at the moment. We in a real world implementation, we've got different groups of people that have all got to be involved in this process. So we've got the governance team that are defining the sort of policies and rules around the data. We've got the architects designing these things, and we've got the engineers then implementing it. We need them all working together. And that's where the tools can really help and the integrations that we've been building. So ER Studio, as I said, integrates with the likes of Calibra and Purview. We can get the governance teams and the architecture teams working together, centering everything around that one single model, that semantic backbone, that knowledge model that we're talking about. We've got an integration with WhereScape. So that beautiful, rich palette of metadata we can push to WhereScape to drive a lot of those automations. Those business models can be pushed to WhereScape to then design the architecture of the warehouse that follows the business. We've now got a business-driven data platform, not a source system, data-driven background platform. And we've got a better chance of delivering value from this.
In the sense of modern data lifecycle, I think one of the things also that is in here is access, just a huge increase in access to commodity data and new data sources that we need to integrate into these models. And if you haven't modeled your data, if you haven't taken the time to actually understand the data and put it, have that semantic meaning there, it's really hard to start integrating these new sources, whether it's through acquisition, whether it's commodity data, data, the data sharing that is so easily accessible now. To be able to integrate that versus just moving it in again to just another set of data that your AI, that your data scientists, report developers need to somehow decide how to integrate on their own. Like if you don't have that up front, that becomes very difficult. And again, just like spreadsheets of old, it just continues to exacerbate the problem. So being able to do that, you have to understand that data to be able to integrate all these new sources that are coming online.
Exactly. Having a good, well-formed data catalog is a key factor here. Being able to find the right data. So understanding that this source system here, yeah, it contains customer information, but what type of customer are you talking about? Having that knowledge up front means sourcing data becomes a lot quicker.
So
And
And
Dave,
here's, I
no, go ahead,
sorry,
Mark.
Mark, go
I
for
just
it.
want to add one thing. David, I know you had this post out there about business data modeling, right? Business process modeling. Very important. And back in the day, we used to create data models based on uh, a business process because data on its own is nothing. I don't just start creating entities and relating them just because I feel like it. It's based on a business process. We've kind of lost that now, but the way we design our logical models with verb phrases and so forth, the business process is kind of pretty self-evident when you look at our models the way we teach it. And then but then you also have Calibra that you can then uh, some integrate your data models with business process models too. So you get that round approach. We're not saying do away with it, but that's a whole different leg that can be done. That I don't know, Jamie, if you want to add anything about business process modeling and ER
All for
Studio.
hours on this. Yeah, my background is enterprise architecture, so you're right. I think from a tooling perspective, it becomes hard, and the level of granularity when you start getting business analysts producing business models, also doing data modeling, then things can get a bit gnarly. And how much detail do they put into those? But definitely, yeah, at a conceptual level, what conceptual data is used in which processes is a very valuable asset. At ER Studio, we've got some data business process modeling components. We've got business architecture that allows you to do some of this.
So now that we have organizations, often from the top down, really focusing on a wide breadth of AI initiatives, getting AI ready, or just pushing out an initiative, even if they aren't necessarily AI ready. There's a lot of new demands on data platforms. And again, this I would kind of keep this open, but what changes when organizations now need their data to support both analytics and AI workloads? But also, I think what we've talked about a bit throughout this conversation, what doesn't change as well? Like what changes with these new initiatives, but like what also stays the same as you now bring AI into the fold?
So I think there's two parts to this. There's how AI will help in that workflow. There's the other part, which is AI is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting on the sort of the back end of this. So we're seeing most BI tools now have some sort of AI capability. Power BI, for instance, allows you to type in natural language queries. It also has mechanisms to sort of look at the data it has access to and come up with its own sort of correlations and signals from it. So built around an AI component. We're seeing a lot of customers now just taking a large language model and connecting it to their data warehouse there or their lakehouse. So Microsoft Fabric and Fabric ontologies, great. We're seeing a lot of customers coming along to us saying, "Oh my gosh, our leadership is just saying just stuff all your data in a big pot into a warehouse. Don't even think about it and just let the AI figure it all out." Danger, danger, Will Robinson. So I think the challenge here is if the AI doesn't understand the meaning of the question that you've given it, you're going to have problems. If the AI doesn't understand the meaning of the data it's got access to, you're going to have big, big problems. And this is where that sort of semantics becomes really important. And another use of the word semantic comes in here. So we've talked about a semantic backbone, meaning that sort of logical model that is going to drive data governance, drive the design of our data warehouse, drive the understanding of our source systems. The other side is how do we inform the AI what all this stuff means? So the semantic layer is another term that comes in. So for BI tools like Power BI, you can create a semantic layer. So maybe you've got all your star schemas in your warehouse. In Power BI, you can effectively create a logical model, a data model of that data, and put all the semantics around it. The challenge is we've got semantic entropy. So that semantic layer might differ from the semantic understanding of the data governance team, which might differ from the semantic model that is used to design the layers of the warehouse or understand the data. So what we're looking at with ER Studio is having one single unified semantic backbone that drives all of these things. So from ER Studio, we can generate semantic layers for Power BI. We're also looking at now the large language model, be able to take those beautiful enterprise logical models and express that in a form that the AI can ingest using things like RDF. And that's where the term semantic backbone comes in. One semantic model that provides the backbone for all of these different initiatives. Mark, anything to add to that? I kind of talked a long time there.
No, 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 no. It's dead on.
Cool.
So, because we're coming up on time, and I want to make sure if there are any questions from folks here that we can answer them. Maybe we do this last question in kind of almost a shotgun approach, and I'll call y'all out just based off of order, at least on my screen. But in one sentence or so, if you were talking to or advising a data leader on building their data platform today, what is the single most important capability? And I think we there's been a common thread throughout this, so it might not be that surprising, but what is the single most important capability they should design into their data lifecycle, their data platform from day one? And Jamie, just because you're first up on my screen, we'll start with you. What is that thing that you'd advise them?
Make sure somebody in your organization is working out what does all this stuff mean.
Perfect. $1,000 an hour. That's it right there. For the advice. I love it. Simon, what about you?
I'd say make sure you're capturing metadata early in the process and generating as much of the artifacts as you can, and so that you can keep it really flexible because your platform is 100, like is guaranteed to change. And I'm just going to go a little bit too far, but just to say that doing that whole end-to-end process of modeling, metadata capture through to generating the end result, you really quick, like the sooner you can do that end-to-end thread, no matter how thin it is, the sooner you work out what metadata you need to be capturing. And if you always feed that back to the beginning, then you can always generate the downstream.
Great. Kevin, you're up next on my screen. Single most important
Yeah.
capability.
Understand your data with the what, the why, and the when of what you're trying to produce. So if you don't understand what it is that you're moving, you're not going to understand what it is when it gets there.
And Mark, from your standpoint,
Well, my whole thing is everybody's been talking about metadata and understanding of the metadata, what it is. My whole thing is educate your people to understand how to define that metadata. How do I define an entity? Therefore, how do I define a class? It's an art. It's not, you can't just ask somebody that works in your department, go define the data product for product. It's understanding what is a product. How do you define something, right? We use AI to help us define our objects, our entities, our classes. And that way it's consistent. I could have people all over the world creating different areas of a model, but it becomes one voice when you use AI, and we teach that in the course how to do that. So again, it's stepping back to the beginning, foundational, the semantic backbone that Jamie talks about. We talk about it as knowledge models, right? Learning how to do that, it's an art. It's not, you can't have anybody do it, and it's a dying art. And we want to bring it back because it's imperative now with things moving so fast. You need that dictionary or that blueprint so that the things to go fast know what they're doing, right?
and I'll add my 2 cents on top of it because even though I didn't ask myself this question, but along with understanding your data, and Mark, I think you're alluding to this a bit. There's also understanding the business. There's oftentimes where the business doesn't understand itself. And doing some of that discovery ends up paying, quite a lot of dividends in the long run here. I know we only have only a few minutes left, but if anyone has any additional questions, we'll give a few minutes here for you folks to put some stuff in the chat for our panelists to answer. Looks like we have one question on, can Claude Code be integrated with ER Studio Data Architect tool to perform the design?
Great question. Not at this time. It's something we're planning. Anybody that's interested in sort of how AI is going to be used to make things faster, stronger, longer in ER Studio, let me know. We can have a bit of a roadmap discussion. Yeah, something we've definitely got to be thinking about.
Same on the WhereScape front. I think being able to some of that metadata that we've been talking about can be curated by by AI. But whatever AI is doing, you'd obviously want to be running checks and balances on it. So I think the real power with frameworks like WhereScape is you can pull the metadata in, some of it from AI, but you're still going to be using you're going to get your predictability through the templates and by being able to see exactly what's coming out the other end before pushing it through into production.
And we do have a field solution that's being played around with it in 3D, WhereScape 3D, that is helping identify things like business keys and attributes and so forth. But as Simon said, it's not perfect. You can't just accept what it tells you. It's not close enough to just go with it. It's a helper, but it's certainly not the answer.
And there might be certain things like, field descriptions. If you're missing them, then maybe an AI one might be better than nothing. But some sort of primary key or something a lot more critical, you would obviously be a lot more
Mhm.
wary of using an AI definition for.
And we didn't really cover sort of agentic workflows and where the AI is involved in sort of supporting the whole process. I mean, Simon and I are having lots of conversations at the moment about things like MCP servers and how do we get humans and machines all working together. Some good discussions there. But I think for today, the big thing is for me is knowledge, semantics, making sure the AI understands what this data means and what the questions are that's put in front of it. Having a single semantic backbone is just vital for that.
Yeah, programmatic control of WhereScape we've been working on for many, many years from a kind of DevOps CI/CD perspective, calling, various different command line and REST API commands to kick off pipelines, to deploy objects from one environment to another, to discover source systems, all sorts of different stuff. I think making that all available via MCP servers so that LLMs can connect, can see what services are on offer, and then ultimately you could drive some of those processes at your own risk from agentic workflows. I think that's a huge growth area.
Mhm.
It looks like we have another question from Thomas here. If anyone can provide a strong example of a design pitfall that can arise when using AI.
Yeah, I've seen it, define composite business keys where they're not actually a composite business key. They should be a relationship, and lots of different things like that. There's so many. Problem is, you take it and you run it, and if you're going to end up with cross-joined data. Just completely expands the volume of data being loaded into the warehouse. So definitely be careful of that. You get records that should be 100,000 records, and now you're looking at loading a billion records into a table that is completely incorrect. And the cost for processing that.
You get an email from the CFO down the line saying what's happening here, what's going on. Any last questions before we're just at the hour here, but maybe one more question. If I don't see one trickle through, I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining. This has been a great conversation, very fruitful, very I've learned a lot myself. Thank you to our panelists for taking the time, for joining, for sharing their insights. In the next day or two, everyone will get a follow-up email with both a recording of this conversation, as well as some additional resources that also relate to today's discussion. If you want to take a deeper dive, feel free to reach out to anyone here on the panel, but also to info@wherescape.com or info@erstudio.com, and we are happy to funnel you to the best person to answer your questions here. Thank you everyone for taking the time, and enjoy either the rest of your day, the rest of your night, your morning, wherever you may be joining from. Thank you so much, and have a great one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Thanks,
everyone.
guys.
So
See you guys.